Hi, I'm Torsten, and this is Literature and Pictures. I'm here with the one and only Bunkmaster B. How are you, dude?
What it do, comic babies? I am so happy to be back here. It has been way too long since we've done this.
It is the Silver Cord, originally an idea from 2003. I don't know if you read the commentary in here in the back by the writer Kevin Kelly, who is the founding executive editor of Wired magazine.
I, I didn't
He's
I didn't know about that.
he's
I
an yeah.
I read the story about him meeting Steve at the church that they went to, and just sort of like the idea of all of that. But I had no idea that he was the founder of Wired.
Yeah, but it was back in the 90s, 1993. He was a writer for New York Times, The Economist, Times, author of many nonfiction books on AI, way before the time before AI became a big thing like it is now. This is his one and only graphic novel. It was a project that him and Steve Masseroni, who back at that time was a comic artist or used to be a comic artist, kind of retired or like left the industry, and then with the idea of this book, kind of caught up with Kevin Kelly, and he kind of came back to drawing comics with this book. They decided to create this project. It took almost 10 years to make to realize it. Initially, they had a publisher. The publisher jumped off when they didn't complete the book or the first part within a year. They wanted their advance back, and then they tried the Kickstarter route, which was successful. So we have part 1 and 2. Originally, they had planned for a third part. On this, I talked to Steve. This is how I discovered this book, was at the Silicon Valley Comic Con in 2019, when I met Steve and bought this book from him. This one has a business card and Steve signing it at the convention. I went in blind and really loved the story, loved the book. I asked him, will there be a part 3? He was kind of hesitant, but that was 5 years ago. He said if enough people are interested in it.
So for me, going completely blind, because again, like I never heard anything about this. I did not meet Kevin Kelly in Silicon Valley.
I didn't meet Kevin Kelly. I met
Steve Messer. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. I didn't meet him either. But it's so for me, this is a book that got better as it went on, and mostly because it's the first half of it reads as people who are very new to comics. Like it's like all of this all the way through. This reads as a complete passion project, and like you can tell like this is something like they've thought about for a while. But especially the first half, there's a lot of things that kind of take me out a little bit. Like first off, the lettering's rough. There's a lot of like very basic like design elements. Like one of the most classic elements of lettering is like you don't cross the tails. There's like multiple times where they do that. Like the flow of it is like it's rough enough that there are times where they have to like put an arrow that tells you like go here and then go here and then go there. The script reads more natural as it goes on, but there's a lot of very like high level ideas and a lot of things that I personally really enjoy. So like historically, a lot of like my favorite sort of higher level fiction, that have to do with deities, have to do with sort of like like man's place versus the divine elements. Like the greatest gift that God gave to man is free will. That's a gift that wasn't shared to the angels, the heavenly host. And one of the sort of classic examples of this is there's a video game series called Shin Megami Tensei, It's very similar to Final Fantasy in that it's a traditional RPG series, but it deals a lot with Judeo-Christian ideas of sort of chaos versus law. And we see a lot of that in there. And just this idea, you see the Black Flame, who I don't read as necessarily inherently evil, and sort of the way that it comes from Shin Megami Tensei. And I think the idea is that he's not supposed to necessarily be evil. He has different ideas. He talks about how I'm so bad with names. Tazi's dad, Ishin, or how like they were actually like friends, and there were certain things that they came on with this. And and so this idea that he's someone that it's like he's almost like to a T the Shin Megami Tensei definition of chaos. And there's so many ideas of sort of the divine meeting with the holy, but the holy isn't necessarily like infallible. And there's a lot of things that I really enjoy that at least in the first half are held back a little bit by just sort of the fact that like, I mean, you said that that Kevin Kelly, he's written a whole bunch of nonfiction. He's a subject matter expert, but like the scripting wasn't quite there. Once you get to the second half, it really kind of opens up with two, because I think part of it being his first time in comics, there's a lot of exposition dumps. The first half, there's a ton of just sort of like vomiting out world building, like all the idea about like, especially the early parts where it's like trying to settle up. It's like astral projection, Nephilim. It just like a lot of that doesn't come naturally. It's just sort of like a girl feels not at home in the world and goes to a meeting, and at the meeting she's given these answers, and then she meets a guy and he gives her answers, and it just like it's sort of like pounding and pounding and pounding, and it's like it's almost like they're trying to set everything up. It's like, all right, eat your vegetables, get that out of the way. And then once you've done that, you can have your real dinner and you can do that. And that's really where it felt most natural to me once you got past that part where she was able to spend more time traveling, doing her astral projection, going into heaven, going into the outer realms. That was where I think the book really shined. But there's a lot to love here. Like I said, there's a lot of really interesting themes. And especially because at the beginning, it kind of seemed like they were coming down on just the idea of that, like AI equals bad. Like AI is going to get devils into Earth. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty basic take. Like, I don't love that. And then like, you kind of realize like, no, it's not that AI equals evil. It's that evil is using this opportunity to do that, but it doesn't have to be that way. I was like, okay, that's a way more nuanced take. I'm way more into that. And like the art cleans up. I actually do the first half of it. I thought the art from Steve Masseroni, like, I'm wondering if you felt this way, but it really reminded me of Peter Eastman. Like a lot of that early TMNT. Like I read this and I'm like, I see a lot of that in there, and it's kind of charming. There's certain things that end up a little rough from there, but I feel like the first half of this book is like finding its legs, learning how to do comics, and then the second half is kind of where it shines, and it's like, okay, I got this. What about you? Like what made you love this book so much that you were like, I want to share this. I got to get this out.
Yeah, no, I don't completely share the like rough start with regards to the story. I agree. There are a couple of things that are like, okay, this is a little bit too much coincidence. Like her going to the meeting and Mark meeting her before, and it's like, you're the one I was looking for, and this is a little bit too coincidental. But that's the first 20 or so pages setting up the story. So I can like disregard this. Okay, like we got to get into the story somehow without extending this too far. So I actually like the introduction to the characters, to this world as well. When Mark initially dies and then comes back, you have the first hint at, okay, this is the silver, like the connection kind of to this other realm. He's coming back, and she has that. It was a little bit cringy with the two colored irises. It's like, oh, only Nephilims have two colored eyes, and next scene is like she's taking her contact lens out. That was a little bit, yeah. I see that taking you a little bit out of your make believe. What I found most irritating about the beginning was change in art styles. So I don't necessarily want to say that I'd prefer seeing Steve's art throughout the entire book, because it's certainly not. But you can tell that they changed artists a lot, and they got them from, I think they mentioned the website or the portal, platform that they hired artists from. No one they knew, mostly remote, and they wanted to complete this book but didn't have the necessary artists, so they hired different artists.
I like the idea that they got the artist from a portal, very on the
platform. So.
Yeah, the black flame came down, and he's asserting his will through the artistry of the book itself.
But yeah, I think that took me out almost, but the fact that the art got better and better throughout the book kind of made me like enjoy the journey even more. So it would have been worse if it started out with amazing art like it is in the second part and then went back to Steve's style.
Which honestly is usually what you get. Like normally with a like
you realize the artists are too expensive, so you have to downgrade.
100%. Like, yeah, like how many stories do you start off and it's just like, oh my God, this art is great. This is so good. And then it's like they're only on it for the first arc, and then it's like the writer's still there and then they change the writing. And you're like, oh, it's good. So like here it's like listen, this is your treat. Like you got through the first part. Wait till you see what I got for you.
You get rewarded for sticking with it. Steve showed off a little bit of the art towards the end. Obviously, how you do it. If you want to sell this book, you open this book towards the end.
It's weird that it's like, hey, I'm Steve. Let me show you not my art.
He knows how to sell the book. To kind of get into it, that's how I got into this book with like, okay, this is this other realm and I'm interested in that part. But then you start reading the story and it's on Earth, normal people, could be anyone, this daughter of her mother having the store, and they're struggling through life, and she meets this guy that she seems to have a crush on, and then it hits you right away. He dies, right? Like this is like okay, I stick with this book because it's not boring. It's like it's some interesting angle.
You completely skip the fact that she goes on the BART. I mean, like honestly, I will say, like you talk about like the first third, it's like it's a little hard going in. I was like, I'm sure this opens up, but like the first 20 pages or so, the story is a little rough. She goes on the BART. It's like, I know why Torsten loves this. It's a San Francisco story. It's a Bay Area book.
I wanted to keep reading. It wasn't a book that I was like, okay, I bought it, now I have to finish it. But it was really interesting to me, and it got better. I reread this. I read it when I initially bought it. So again, that was like 5 years ago. And then I reread it for a meeting. And I forgot about many things in there, but the whole loophole thing, actually now with other media that has come out, kind of reminds me of that, and makes me think, oh, this concept has been replicated. I don't know if it's the same idea. Probably, I don't know if it was based on it. But if you've watched the movie Soul by Pixar, little blue beings jumping in, those are the souls that are jumping into newborn babies and giving them the soul and the identity that they have. That's the silver cord. That's the angels being washed clean, having no memory of who they were first, going into newborns and giving them their soul, giving them their identity, not remembering who they were when they are on Earth. That's exactly the movie Soul. Now, having that second angle in there of what happens if there's a loophole, and that loophole can be, if you assume that AI will be at the point where one conscience is created artificially, does that being also have a soul? And yes, if you're in the spiritual realm and believe in those things, who gives them that soul? Who gives them that spirit? And to solve that there must be a second portal that is now being abused. or created for that purpose, and not washing the angels free of their conscience, of their memories, but keeping the memories of those other angels. And what would happen if a being, it doesn't necessarily have to be AI, to have angels not cleaned of their knowledge, of their memory, of their soul, when they enter some being with a conscience, what would happen then? That the angels that give humans a soul are being cleansed of all of that, that humans are what they are. This is the alternative to what if that didn't happen. And that angle, I think, was more interesting to me than the whole, oh, this happens through AI. Yeah, they use AI as a vehicle just because it's on everyone's mind. I guess 10, 20 years ago, it was already on everyone's mind. Now it's become a little bit more realistic that, like, yeah, what happens? A self-thinking robot, what's the, who provides the moral guidelines? Who provides the consciousness? Is that a soul? Is that something else? And kind of explain it through that. It's, to me, just a plot vehicle. To me, it's more interesting is, yeah, if you believe in that spiritual realm, what if those beings weren't cleansed before they entered Earth?
Yeah, and I think I agree. And the idea of like AI being more like set dressing, like the fact that it's AI, it's like a touch point, but that's not necessarily the important part. What's important is the fact that, like you said, it's simply another way of consciousness of a soul to sort of enter Earth, but through the non-traditional way. I mean, it could just as well be like, they could have done the exact same book with cloning, let's say.
This was written in the 90s, it would have been cloned.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like the Raelians cloned Dolly the sheep, like all of that. Like that was a huge concern at that point. And, you do that exact same kind of thing. Like there was a question of like, with cloning, what rights do they have? Do they have a soul? Was like the religious question there. It's the same, so here AI is just sort of, it sounds like the sphere that Kevin Kelly was working in, being in Wired, with AI. And, he obviously knows that it's not the kind of thing that it's just like AI goes from like not existing traditionally to like flip a switch and you have the quantum core and now it just exists. It's, we're seeing traditionally going through, there's a reason that the Turing test exists. And, we put every iteration of basically an AI learning algorithm through the Turing test to see if it can like fool someone and go ahead and do it. And technically the Turing test has been passed, but it's kind of, going, didn't really count. But yeah, so I think like that, the greater, like the fact it's AI isn't that important. And just sort of, again, these grand ideas of just sort of like the earthly realm versus the realms beyond. Like I'm big into that. Like I get down on stuff. Like I said, I'm a huge Shin Megami Tensei fan. And like so many of those themes of the idea of like Earth being this like sort of like staging ground of the forces of law, basically the Judeo-Christian God and the forces that are set upon, using this as the staging ground against the forces of chaos, like, people, not just people, but like forces should be able to like do as they want. Black Flame is going out. Like you shouldn't be tethered to these ideas. If you want something, go out, take it, go ahead and do it. Then we got Oryx coming in here, who, is this sort of vengeful angel who is jealous of the fact that the creator empowered the heavenly host, these angels. But basically, like, even in the superpowered state, you have to wait until you get to go through there to experience the true majesty of basically God's will, God's love, with free will, with senses, with things like that. And it's just, the idea that once you get in that state, the shackles come off and you're free to mess up. Thematically, there's a lot that's going on there that I really, really like. And those were kind of the things that I really enjoyed, kind of when we got for those staging things. It was, I honestly think they went a little deeper with the lore and the world building than they had to. I think this is one that you didn't need to get so technical in. and not and weirdly like not even in the like the AI, the robotic sphere. Um, but yeah, they're
Angelic sphere, like the real angelic realm. You don't have to um, describe hundreds of different types of angels or the
yeah.
logistics, but because that's yeah, this book isn't perfect. Like
No,
there's many elements that um I dislike, like some of the logistics stuff. Like, what is this umbilical cord? I get the silver cord, but then the umbilical cord, like if you cut this, where does it go? Like, is it crossing the entire realm? Wouldn't there be so many umbilical silver cords hanging around that anyone could cut? Like, how long is it? Where does it go? Where does it enter this realm and exit the other one?
that was a little weird when it was just like, they're up there astral projecting and it's just like literally like snip, dead, gone.
So you have many of those things. Suddenly in the second part you have a narrator aspect that didn't exist in the first parts. There's a few pages, doesn't go through the entire second part. It just happens a few times in part 2 where there's a narrator out of nowhere. Who's narrating now? Like literally the first few pages in part 2, there's a narrator now.
I was super thrown by the fact, after you talked about the fact that like the Nephilim's eyes are green and brown, and like that's such a like huge plot point in the beginning, and then like in the second part, suddenly she's angelic and her eyes are blue and green, and it's like, wait, what? And then I had like flip back, and then like later they made it a big point uh, when she's back on Earth, it's like green and brown. So I guess the idea is that when she's astral projecting, like one of her eyes becomes blue.
I mean, she's also has blue skin and red hair when she's in the angelic realm. But yeah, those are the logistics that okay, not necessarily make sense. But again, to me, I judge a book by a book's quality by how much it makes me think and
Yeah.
how much I look back and how long I keep thinking about it. I kept thinking. I had different ideas about it after I read it. I didn't just put it away and forgot about it. But it's something interesting. What if your soul wasn't cleansed before it entered your body, or in that case, some other entity?
And to your point too, like this is a book I felt like that kept getting better all throughout it. It's like every phase of it was getting better and better as it went on, and not even just like the huge team that changed that happened between book 1 and book 2, but just like even within that, like if you look at the end of book 1 and you go back to the beginning of book 1, it's like, okay, you could pretty clearly see all of this is improved. And so, I'd love to see a book 3 just to kind of see like how much better it was even from what that was there. Not to mention the fact that book 2 ends on a pretty major cliffhanger that it sounds like we're never going to get resolved.
I like though that, so with how it ends now, it seems like that's how the story ends. It could still stand on its own, not knowing, because that happens in your head. Then what happens next? I agree. When I first read the book, it's like there is so much missing that I want to know. Like part 3 is necessary to complete the story. Now I'm more like, well, the message here is it doesn't end. Even if you win this part of war, there's a competitor that will do the same. There's someone else who will not like go by the rules, and there will always be something. It's like the loophole will always exist, and somehow they will find a way to Earth. Of course, then it'll be interesting. What do they do on Earth? And once Black Flame has taken its shape on Earth, what will happen there?
And that's where I think the distinction is important, and the way that again I read it, and is the fact that like throughout the book at the beginning, like Black Flame is the classic like menacing villain. Like she sees him in things. He has this really, impressive, like terrifying, almost demon-like appearance. His name is the Black Flame. Like everything is meant there to be like, if this happens, it's game over. It's hell on earth. The demons are rising. There's going to be an uprising from hell. It's basically like the way it makes it seem is it's like Lucifer Morningstar has come, when really it's, to your point, it's still an angel. They're dark angels. They haven't been cleansed, but they're still angels. And it's basically like the idea is that you're bringing a separate philosophy here, and it's going to be different than we're used to, and everything like that's happening. But I look at that as being not Earth is doomed, but things have changed, and there's a big difference there.
It's like introducing hero or superhumans to the world that have more strength and different morals. Like it's what do they do with them, right? Do they go down the Superman route or do they go down the Homelander route? And yeah, it would be interesting to see where it goes. I'm a little bit less, I give Black Flame a little bit less credit than you, because he does eat other angels, even in the angelic realm. So I don't know how much good is in him.
But again, I don't think he's good necessarily. But again, I think he's bringing with him that classic Shin Megami Tensei chaos route, where it's like people should be freed from the shackle of law and told this is what you must do. And it's a more impulsive world. It's a more like primal world. That probably leads to a more inherently evil world if people are working only off their impulses. But then you're going off of basically like very classical philosophy. You're going to the Leviathan, the idea that man is inherently primal and evil, and it's only civilization that purges those base systems. You're looking at David Hume. You're looking at like a lot of very classic philosophy, that says that goes to just the sort of basic, what is the nature of man? And I think that's sort of more what we get with a world that's being led by Black Flame. The idea that, someone is more likely to take what they can. It's chaos route ending for Shin Megami Tensei. I keep going back to that because I think it's so clearly like those two sides, like the whole idea that when Tassie is going to the Guardians and she's saying like, yo, guys, this is happening over there. They're like, nah, that's not God's will. He didn't tell us that. And we got it on lockdown here. All right. We get the Supreme Creator is supreme. We're following a script. We're doing what he said. We're good. Thank you. And like, that's like
bureaucracy. It could also be like
100%. No, it's
metaphorical for governments not catching up with AI and being blind to what's happening.
But it's not even like being blind. It's like it's being shackled by the system. Yeah. So, I mean, just like if you think about like the U.S., just the U.S. system, we've got 3 branches of government. The idea is everything's supposed to be kept in check. You have, let's say in there, you have a representative from California who sees what's going on with Gobi and is like, guys, we have to do something about this. We need to take action now. And he goes before the House of Representatives and is like, in my state of California, there's a rogue robot who's going crazy. We need to do something. And then a representative from Missouri goes, well, I have not seen anything of that happening in my home, let me tell you. And what you're saying for this AI defense force would be taking away funds from this other thing that we need to go ahead and do, which is a clear and present need. And it's this idea that like law, this structure is sort of holding people back from taking action that's needed, versus someone like Black Flame isn't going to be waiting for something like that. Something's going to go ahead and happen. It's again, just like the law versus chaos, all things going there. I think really what comes down to is next time I need to send you something, I'm just sending you Shin Megami Tensei series and you're playing through it.
You have to. There's one fun, I don't know, I'm not going to call it Easter egg, but like if you compare pages 41 and 385, they're basically the same thing, or the same route that they're taking. In the first one, I believe it's Tassie chasing Mark, and then so page 41.
Okay, so Mark's on the cell phone. He's running after Tassie.
Yeah, Mark chasing Tassie.
Okay.
On page 41, and then 385.
Okay, 385.
You have Gobi taking the same path.
Oh yeah,
the same panel structure,
going
same items,
those same stairs.
same. You can see the pyramid building, coin tower.
Riding his bike off of some very, very San Francisco houses and a very San Francisco hill. Again, if anyone wonders why Torsten chose this one, I mean, don't wonder at all. That is the most Bay Area book that that exists.
It's how big it is. I tried to fit it in my calyx, and it doesn't fit in the calyx.
We've got Absolute Swamp Thing right here. We've got the Silver Cord. Where's Swamp Thing? I don't know. Bigger than an Absolute.
It's still available on Amazon for like $25. This is larger than an Absolute. Has almost 500 pages, amazing art. And I can't believe how this hasn't sold out over the last 10 years, because this thing came out in 2014. There are some, I opened the wrong page. Let me find a page with some, especially in the back, there are some great
just on like
scenes.
The physical build of this book alone, I was shocked at the price point on this. Because like you said, we just showed off there. It's bigger than an Absolute. It's 440 pages, something like that, of story. This is a big, substantial book that, if this was coming out now in the direct market, like, there is no way that this book is less than $100 cover. It's probably $125, especially coming from a smaller publisher. But like you said, like, the fact that it exists on Amazon for $25 is maddening. Like, also, real quick, before we do anything else, we're talking about the build of this book and just like how good this is. Can we take a quick moment to?
I don't even have the space to unfold that here.
Look at this. Look at this. This is a $25 book. Again, this is bigger than an Absolute. And we have a however crazy long this is. And then there's stuff on the back too. Like,
I was wondering if you have to read this upside down, like you have to put that up, because I think it's coming out, but I could be wrong. It could be sideways too. Like, that's the.
I mean, the idea is it's happening in like the infinite realms where there is no up or down or sideways or anything. Like, directions don't exist. So I think any direction is as valid as any other direction.
And then on the back, it continues with the story. So you have to go back
and you have actually,
to page by page.
Yeah, so you have to still keep it like out and like everything like that.
That was our review. Thank you for joining me today. This was Literature and Pictures. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and stay tuned for more content like this. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone who's still here. See you next time.
See ya.